Sabrina McKay, a brilliant but overlooked restaurateur, has spent 12 years keeping her family's Charleston restaurant alive while her brother Mason takes credit. When their father retires, Mason inherits the business and belittles Sabrina as too emotional to lead. Broken but not beaten, she walks away that morning and builds her own restaurant from scratch, proving that integrity and passion will always outlast arrogance and privilege. Her rise becomes a quiet rebellion, and her success, a poetic reckoning. Beginning, betrayal and departure. Mason humiliates Sabrina in front of their staff, claiming ownership of the family restaurant. Sabrina, holding back her rage, leaves silently, choosing dignity over despair. Conflict, the rebuild. She signs a lease on a small downtown space, determined to create her own restaurant. Fear and exhilaration blend as she rebuilds her dream from the ground up. Midpoint twist, family downfall. Her rise. McKay's southern kitchen begins to crumble under Mason's mismanagement, while Sabrina's talent draws allies and opportunity, including an invitation to Charleston's elite food showcase. Build to climax, race against time. With only weeks to prepare, Sabrina faces exhaustion, doubt, and the ghosts of her family name, all while trying to prove her worth in the city's toughest culinary spotlight. Climax, triumph at the showcase. Her food and story captivate critics and guests alike, earning her restaurant, McKay's Table, acclaim as the authentic soul of Charleston cooking. Ending, quiet victory. Mason calls, his empire collapsing. Sabrina ignores the call, plating her final dish as morning sunlight floods her kitchen, symbolizing rebirth, independence, and peace. Mason's cruel line, this business needs real leadership, not emotional women. Sabrina's calm exit, power in restraint. Signing the lease, rebirth. Ex-employees joining her, validation and loyalty. The showcase invite, divine timing and justice. Mason's silent call, emotional closure without confrontation. Empowerment and revenge through success. Workplace and family betrayal. Southern setting and culinary culture add cinematic texture. Strong female lead rising independently. Poetic justice ending. These resonate deeply with modern audiences, especially on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, or short film reels where emotion plus victory drives engagement. Mason's villainy is one-dimensional, lacks complexity or inner motivation. Sabrina's emotional process is underdeveloped, she's too composed too quickly. The final success feels slightly rushed, lacks one final test or emotional doubt before triumph. The parents' perspective and family fallout could add richer emotional tension. Some business and food details are told rather than shown. Add sensory realism, kitchen sounds, heat, textures of food, Charleston atmosphere. Give Mason insecurity and pressure to humanize him. Include a moment of collapse for Sabrina before her rise, to deepen her transformation. Add symbolism, the act of cooking as healing and reclaiming identity. Make the ending poetic but grounded, success without gloating, peace without apology. Women aged 25 to 45, especially professionals who faced bias or erasure. Fans of emotional, character-driven short films. Viewers who enjoy revenge arcs, entrepreneurship, and personal triumph. Perfect for platforms focused on emotional storytelling and empowerment, YouTube shorts, reels, short films. The smell of cornbread filled the air, warm, buttery, deceivingly comforting. But the words that followed sliced through the room sharper than any kitchen knife. From now on, this business needs real leadership, not emotional women trying to play boss. Mason's voice carried across the room, confident, rehearsed, and cruelly casual. The staff looked at me, not him. They knew who had kept this restaurant breathing for 12 years, who had fought through staff shortages, vendor collapses, and nights that stretched until dawn. But none of that mattered now. My name was no longer on the door. I sat there, hands folded on the table, watching my brother bask in his moment. His brand new watch caught the morning light as he spoke about vision and innovation. He'd learned those words in boardrooms, not kitchens. Any questions? He asked, smirking. The silence was suffocating. I stood. The chair scraped against the wooden floor, a sound that made Mason flinch for just a heartbeat. Congratulations, Mason, I said softly. I hope the restaurant gets the leadership it deserves. I walked out before he could respond. Through the swinging kitchen doors, past the scent of greens simmering in ham broth, past Bethany's trembling hands and Carlos's furrowed brow. Outside, Charleston's morning air was thick and heavy. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. My hands shook, but my heart was calm. He thought he'd taken everything. He hadn't. I scrolled to a contact I'd been avoiding for weeks and pressed call. Hello, Mr. Patterson. It's Sabrina McKay. I'm ready to sign that lease. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't driving to McKay's Southern Kitchen. I was driving toward my own beginning. The building on King Street still smelled of dust and old paint. The last tenant, a failed boutique, had left behind cracked mirrors and forgotten light fixtures. But as I stood inside, sunlight pouring through the tall windows, I saw it differently. Not as what it was, but what it could become. A restaurant where stories were served with food. Where the flavors of home met the discipline of craft. Where no one would ever call me emotional for caring. Mr. Patterson walked me through lease details, but my mind was already rearranging the space: kitchen to the back, open counter near the front, cornbread oven right in the middle like a heartbeat. Can you be open in 2 months? He asked. I'll do it in 6 weeks, I replied. When I left with the signed lease, I sat on the curb, overwhelmed. Fear swirled with exhilaration. I'd just bet everything, savings, pride, identity, on myself. That night, I emailed vendors. Old friends. People who knew what I stood for. Tony from Coastal Produce called back first. About damn time, he laughed. You've been running that kitchen for years anyway. By morning, I had supplier commitments and my first staff inquiry, Bethany, our pastry chef, who said she couldn't stand the new direction under Mason. Meanwhile, rumors spread. Mason had changed suppliers to save costs. The cornbread fell apart. Loyal customers complained. My old restaurant was bleeding from the inside out. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. Just ready. I opened my laptop, typed a name at the top of a blank page, McKay's table. My table. My name. My legacy. 3 weeks in, the noise from Mason's disaster grew louder. Staff quit. Reviews soured. Customers complained that McKay's Southern Kitchen lost its soul. Bethany called one night, voice trembling. He replaced the ham hocks with cheap ones, Sabrina. Says customers won't notice. I wanted to scream, but instead, I wrote recipes, refined, reimagined, mine. The next morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. Miss McKay, this is Dr. Patricia Hendricks from the Charleston Food Network. We'd like to invite your new restaurant to our autumn showcase. I almost dropped the phone. The showcase was Charleston's Culinary Olympics, impossible to enter without years of reputation. But we haven't opened yet, I said. We've heard enough. Your food's reputation precedes you. It wasn't Mason's reputation they'd heard about, it was mine. When I hung up, I sat in the empty restaurant, sunlight painting the bare walls gold. Fear whispered, "You're not ready." But another voice, steady, quiet, said, "You've been ready for 12 years. I called my contractor. Jerry, I need the kitchen done in 5 weeks. 5? That's insane. So am I said. Opening day arrived like a fever dream. The kitchen buzzed. Steam hissed. Butter sizzled. The smell of bourbon and peaches filled the air. Jennifer, my old head server, smiled from across the counter. "Feels like home again," she said. Our first customer was Mrs. Davidson, 82 years old, cane in hand. "I've been eating at your daddy's place for 15 years, she said. "But honey, that new boy doesn't understand food." When she took her first bite of cornbread, she smiled through tears. "This is it. This is the real thing." By Friday night, word had spread. Every table full. Every plate scraped clean. The reviews called it soulful, authentic, alive. In the chaos, I caught myself pausing, letting the smell of fresh bread and honey butter fill my chest. It wasn't pride I felt. It was peace. Then, an email came in, Charleston Food Network Showcase, final confirmation. I read it twice. 5 weeks to prove myself in front of every critic who'd ever ignored my name. 5 weeks to show them who really built McKay's legacy. I smiled, tied my apron tighter, and whispered, "Let's get to work." The market hall gleamed under chandelier light. 24 restaurants. The best of Charleston. My booth stood between 2 celebrity chefs. I had 3 dishes: pan-fried chicken with honey bourbon glaze, my grandmother's cornbread with herb butter, bourbon peach cobbler, the dessert that started it all. The crowd came fast. Critics, bloggers, foodies. One bite, one smile, one whispered, "Finally, real Southern food." By the second hour, our booth had a line that snaked around the hall. Dr. Hendricks found me mid-service. "Miss McKay, your name's everywhere tonight. People love your story." My story? A woman dismissed by her family builds her own table. That's not just food, that's power. I looked at my team, Bethany plating desserts, Carlos laughing with customers, Jennifer telling the origin of our recipes. It wasn't just food. It was freedom. By the night's end, we'd served over 300 guests. Applause echoed as awards were announced. Best New Establishment, McKay's Table. I closed my eyes as the lights hit my face. The same hands Mason said were too emotional now held a trophy. Morning sunlight spilled across the empty dining room of McKay's Table. The air still smelled of butter and bourbon from last night's service. My phone buzzed, "Mason." I stared at the name for a long moment, then turned the phone face down. Some victories didn't need words. I brewed coffee, tied my apron, and walked into the kitchen. Carlos was already there, humming. Bethany slid a tray of biscuits into the oven. Jennifer checked reservations, fully booked for 6 weeks. "Full house again," she said, smiling. I smiled back. Outside, Charleston woke slowly, golden light dripping through the windows. I plated the first dish of the day, cornbread, honey butter melting into its crevices, and set it on the pass. This was my inheritance. Not the building Mason owned, but the craft, the care, the soul. The real McKay legacy. "Table 1 ready," I said softly. And as I watched my team carry the plate out to the first customer, I realized I hadn't lost the family name. I'd redefined it. Fade out.